There's a couple basic rules I want to get to before we even talk about legal structures. Once you understand these, it will make a whole bunch more sense. Number one is we always keep valuable biz assets out of an operating company. Now that seems like a very simple concept, but um, I don't. There's operating companies that are going to have liability. They're going to be exposed. They're out advertising. They're saying, hey, come here. We want your business. We can serve you better than anybody else. But we don't put real estate, for instance. We don't put large equipment in an operating company. Why? Because we want to keep that operating company lean and mean. If it's ever sued, it doesn't own the real estate. It leases the real estate. It doesn't own the equipment. Maybe it doesn't own the intellectual property, the patents, the copyrights. The valuable assets we keep out of the operating company and lease or license or manage the assets, but we keep the assets in an operating company to a bare minimum. The other basic thing I want that will help is that we're trying to separate your active activities from your passive activities and send as much money down and create passive income for you that's not subject to 15.3% self-employment taxes. So we might manage our properties out of a management company, but the ownership that we want that to be passive and make you eligible for lower income tax rates. So those two basic things: keep valuable assets out of an operating company and separate passive from active activities. Once you understand that, that will help understand where we're going to go with this. There's 4 steps in my mind to selecting a proper entity for you. Clarifying what the business purpose is, selecting the proper legal structure, which is a very different question, is how do I want to tax the little bugger and what state do I want to put it in? A lot of people will right off the bat go, okay, I'm a real estate investor. Should I be an LLC? And should I be a C Corp? Well, there's really 2 different questions. Should I be a corporation? And should I be taxed as a C corporation? And should I be a Nevada corp? Well, so I'm going to try to break these down and go through these. And this is really the foundation of what we're going to be talking about tonight, is clarifying your business purpose, selecting the proper legal structure, the best jurisdiction, and the best tax for your business. All right, so let's start with a basic summary. For most people that have assets to protect, we generally want to start with an operating company. We start with a holding company. Let's say we ran, you've got a large portfolio of stocks and bonds and mutual funds. We would hold that in your holding company, but we would manage it through the corporation. As a result of having 2 entities, one that owns, one to manage. So what I've done, you basically set up your own little Charles Schwab, your own Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley to manage assets. As a result of you not be the operating company not owning them, then it's eligible for all types of tax perks. Let's say I'm running 10 of my own rental properties. I would operate that through a real estate management company, but hold the real estate in a holding company or a series of holding companies. If I was running a residential assisted living, I would operate that through the operating company. That's where I would hire the employees. I would advertise, but the holding company would simply own the real estate. Hilton, Marriott, great examples of how this works. One entity owns the business, owns the real estate, and one manages it. And what ties these 2 entities together is a well-worded management agreement that's nothing more than a great big finger pointing at the management company saying it's your fault. because this multi-million dollar property might be freeway accessible. It might be, you know, I don't know, airport accessible. There's a lot of money tied up in that real estate holding company. So what we want to do is we want to shift by contract all risk. If somebody dies in the swimming pool, it's his fault. If somebody gets poisoned in the restaurant, it's his fault. We're shifting away from the equity in real estate up to a management company that really owns little bottles of shampoo and bottles of water and used bed sheets and assets that nobody wants. We want to keep the operating company lean and mean. Remember, that was rule number one. And rule number two is now we want to separate the passive from the active. The holding company did not actively manage that business. Therefore, because the operating company had hired somebody else to do it. I didn't actively manage the stocks. The operating company, my investment company did. And so as a result of that, now anything that you take out of the holding company, I don't have to pay 15.3% self-employment taxes. Again, I'm separating the active income of the operating company from the passive income of the holding company. Now, I also know that most of you are going to have a revocable living trust. In this discussion tonight, let's just assume that you know that. And this will be a discussion for a later date because I really want to talk about the legal structures of, you know, corporations, limited partnership, LLCs. Know that they'll tie into a trust, but that's not where we're going to go tonight. Let's talk specifically about the operating company. What could be a business purpose for an operating company? Well, maybe it's to manage my real estate holdings. Maybe it's manage lots of people's holdings. But I'm separate. This is an active business. Maybe it's simply to manage my own investments. I've got a little stock over here. It's a little real estate over here. Maybe I've got some, I don't know, whatever. Maybe I'm buying and selling silver or automobiles or whatever it is. Maybe I've got a medical or a dental facility, maybe a retail store, a residential assisted living or a shared housing facility. Maybe I'm simply doing consulting. And you know, there are some of these, I'm doing household services. Maybe I'm a contractor or I'm doing cleaning services. I'm flipping houses, whatever it is. There's hundreds and maybe thousands of business purposes you can have. Whatever you do, we want you to keep the assets in there fairly small. Now, if I'm sitting at my home desk and I'm doing some consulting for people or I've got an online business, maybe we don't need an operating company or a holding company. Maybe it's all we need is the operating company. But the business purpose is something that's I'm actively managed. I'm actively trying to make money. Remember, in the eyes of the IRS, for you to have a business, as all I need is the intent to make a profit. I don't even have to be successful. The IRS says if you have the intent to make a profit in this business venture, you're a business. Now, we haven't got to, oh my gosh, it should be a corporation or an LLC or just, it's an operating company right now. 10,000 foot view, and let's look down on it. The holding company is going to be very differently. What would be the business purpose of a holding company? Well, it would be to own the investments. It's not managing them, it's simply owning. It owns the real estate. It owns the intellectual property, the patents, copyrights, trademarks. It owns the equipment, etc. Again, even a holding company has to have the intent to make a profit. Sometimes we run into this with students that want to put their personal residence into a holding company. And we go, well, there's really no business intent for this. You're not intending to make, well, I mean, hopefully your house appreciates. Or they put their boat or their vehicles into a business entity without the intent to make a profit. Well, that doesn't work all that well. And so even a holding company, you need the intent to make a profit. What are the assets? Let's go back to an operating company. What are the assets that that an operating company would own? Well, it would own certainly a bank account so that you can put money in, so that you can collect money from your students, your clients, I don't know, whatever. Um, that would certainly be an asset. And then it would own the depreciating tools of your business. It might be a cell phone, it might be a calculator, it might be a laptop, it might be a lot of the things that really aren't worth much. We're not putting major assets, but but small depreciating assets. Accounts receivable and inventory would always go in the operating company. Now, if I've got a lot of money tied up, let's say I'm a grocery store and I've got a couple $1 million worth of inventory, or I'm a dentist's office, I've got a lot of accounts receivable, we can encumber those to keep them safe with debt or with liens or friendly liens or whatever. But we would, if you try to hold accounts receivable and inventory outside of that and lease those, you're going to cause all kinds of tax problems. So accounts receivable, every business is going to have maybe a few little office supplies. But again, what we're doing with this, and that the point I want to make is that operating company is really lean. Nobody really wants your used pencil. Thank you, but it's not an attractive asset in a lawsuit. Real estate would be. This building is leased to our company, but it's certainly not owned by the operating company. What are the assets then of a holding company? Well, that's very different. This is where we put the big stuff. This is where we put our brokerage accounts. This might be where we put the real estate, our bank accounts, the big savings accounts. This is where I put equipment. This is where I put the vehicles that maybe the company uses. If I've got a construction company, the heavy equipment is held in a holding company and leased to the operating company, keeping the operating company lean. And any money that comes to me through that holding company, again, we want it to be passive by nature. This is where I'm going to keep intellectual property like copyrights and trademarks and patents. You can't really keep trade secrets in a holding company, but that type of intellectual property we could. So in essence, the holding company, the design is to keep major assets. Again, operating company, lean and mean. The holding company is major assets that are leased or managed or something. Okay.